4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
Apparently, it makes a bit of a difference, Miss Clinton. Is the Benghazi cover-up starting to catch up to the White House? And could it be catching up to someone like Hillary Clinton, who has all been but presumed to be president in 2016? New documents reveal redacted emails proves that the White House changed talking points, all to help fit a narrative during a very important election time for the president. Well, now the story is finally starting to gain some traction with the mainstream media. But where does it go from here? Let's bring in Joel Pollak of Breitbart News, and I'm glad we get to talk about this very story because it's finally nice to see that it's getting a bit of traction.
Well, it is, because this email contradicts much of what the White House said it did when it was preparing talking points. In fact, it pointed to the CIA as the source of the controversial talking points, blaming a YouTube video for the violence in Benghazi September 11th on that fateful night. But the other thing this batch of emails has done is shown that the White House did not hand over all relevant information as it had claimed to have done. This batch of emails was released as part of a lawsuit by Judicial Watch, a non-governmental organization here in the U.S., which sued basically because the government wasn't complying with its Freedom of Information Act request to produce the emails. When the emails were produced, they shocked the media, and the media had been quite accustomed already to buying the administration's line about Benghazi. And I think the reason the media is now reacting the way that they are is that the emails weren't released and the White House said they had been, more than the actual substance of the emails. On top of that, Cheryl Atkinson, the CBS News reporter who just left CBS News partly because they would not allow her to investigate Benghazi fully, she's just released some emails on her website showing that the deputy to Hillary Clinton knew on the morning of September 12th, 2012, right after the attacks, that an Islamic extremist group had been involved, and there was no mention whatsoever of a kind of protest over a YouTube video. So what's emerging is what the public has known for quite some time, except in the details, which is that the administration wanted to cover up the fact that it had allowed a terror attack on September 11th on President Obama's watch in the middle of a re-election campaign where he was claiming to have wiped out al-Qaeda. And instead, they concocted this video story to allow the president to coast past the crisis. The media helped him do it, whether by covering Mitt Romney's statements rather than Obama's actions, or by allowing Mitt Romney to be scored, I guess, a point negative in the second presidential debate. But regardless, this is all going to get reopened now, and it doesn't matter, as one Obama administration former official said yesterday, that this was 2 years ago. Yeah. The Watergate scandal happened 2 years after the break-in, so there you go.
I mean, if your head could spin off, I mean, I was just floored by this National Security Council spokesman. So not just some chump in the administration, he's pretty high up. Tommy Viter's interview with Bret Baier. We've got this exchange. Let's take a look at what the dude said. I mean, it's just crazy what he just said.
At 6:21, the White House, me, add a line about the administration warning of September 10th of social media reports calling for demonstrations. True?
I believe so.
Did you also change attacks to demonstrations in the talking points?
Maybe. I don't really remember.
You don't remember?
Dude, this was like 2 years ago. We're still talking about the most mundane
it is the thing
process
that everybody is talking about.
We're talking.
Like, dude, apparently Spicoli works for the White House and apparently doesn't remember that there are grieving families who actually do want to know what happened to their loved ones, because it was President Obama and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton who were telling them to their faces, we will find who's responsible. And this guy has the audacity to get on like news media and like, dude, like make such light of it. I find his answer just appallingly arrogant.
It's arrogant, and it shows you that these 4 deaths were not really taken seriously by the administration. It's reflective of an attitude throughout the Obama administration in general, which is very cool and with it, and certainly good at pulling public support together around election time, but very incapable of governing. And the sort of dude whatever approach to governing just hasn't worked out. What's really striking to me about this is 2 things. First, what he revealed in the interview. He revealed and confirmed that Obama was not in the Situation Room during the crisis. That is the room that they retire to whenever they're dealing with major national security events, such as the Osama bin Laden raid, for example. Obama was not there. Secondly, he doesn't know whether he was the one who edited the talking points. And third, he actually blamed reporters or cited reporters as the source for the claim that the video had motivated the protests. He said not White House intelligence, not CIA, not the military, it was reports in the media, and I think he's referring to the Cairo protest, not the Benghazi protest. So it's all a big mix-up. The other thing, though, is that Tommy Vietor is not an administration official any longer. He left the administration, and yet he has this slavish, almost cultish loyalty to President Obama to the extent that he's willing to participate in the cover-up even after he no longer relies on them for a paycheck.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, what else is extraordinary is Jay Carney, who I think is more delusional these days than Baghdad Bob, because in a question with Ed Henry of Fox News, who, I mean, they've really been pushing this as far as the television side of coverage. I mean, he really stands firm in trying to, like, stick it to Ed Henry, I mean, for having the audacity to question. Let's take a look at his exchange.
You can just read it and then decide for yourself. As many people have now said and written, like, this is a conspiracy and theory and pursuit of a conspiracy.
The conservative group comes in and says, we want Benghazi documents. The administration says, this is not a Benghazi document, so we're not turning it over, right?
Again, I don't, like, this is a State Department FOIA request response. Yeah, but again, whether it was released Monday or a week ago Monday or whatever, it doesn't change the fundamental facts about the so-called talking points.
The so-called talking points, nonetheless. Jay Carney, he's running out of spin.
Right. Well, the administration has treated Fox News like a pariah almost since the beginning when it came into office in 2009. And now that is no longer going to work, at least not on this issue. You see the hardest line of questioning actually coming from ABC News, from Jonathan Karl. And other people are climbing on board. And again, the issue isn't the substance so much of what happened when, but the fact that the White House didn't release an email which was directly relevant to Benghazi. Jay Carney says, well, it wasn't relevant to Benghazi, it had nothing to do with Benghazi, and yet the State Department released it because it was connected to Benghazi.
Yeah.
The State Department is not, as Fox News said yesterday, is not a rogue agency. It does report ultimately to President Obama, so the idea that the State Department would act completely independently and make an independent decision that this had to do with Benghazi while the White House had a different view is just not credible. Let
me ask you this, because we're running out of time. Ben Rhodes, who's accused of, I guess, changing the talking points, just happens to have a brother who is super high up in CBS. You know, they're part of the big mainstream media. So you're getting to see this very incestuous relationship between relatives who work in the newsrooms who also have ties to the White House. Is the mainstream media ever going to catch on and start actually reporting this story now that we actually have confirmation of these emails? And will it actually start sticking to Hillary Clinton, who already is assumed to be president in 2016?
The answer to that first question about CBS News, CBS is not going to cover it. They didn't cover the Ben Rhodes email story. Other networks are going to cover it. CBS, by the way, was the network most responsible for covering up Obama after September 11th, 2012. And the second part of that question is, yes, this does affect Hillary Clinton. Yesterday we had the Brigadier General in charge of AFRICOM intelligence say that the State Department failed to request military assistance for Benghazi. So that's going to haunt her, I think, in the months ahead. Yeah,
well, it's certainly interesting, but certainly interesting why 60 Minutes has not yet done a hard interview with Mr. Obama. It sure does explain a lot, but...
Well, it's interesting. They actually did one prior to the election, but they edited out Obama's comments about Benghazi. So they were part of this cover-up that they allege isn't happening. They actually were very much a part of it. They had an interview on 60 Minutes, and they used it to deflect, not to probe what actually happened.
Yeah, and then there's Candy Crowley, who will continue to do her job, even though she essentially cost Mitt Romney an election debate that he was absolutely nailing and interrupted the narrative. And she was wrong. But again, no one holds these people to account, and they continue helping with the cover-up.
That's right. Crowley is very excited about the imminent birth of the heir to the Clinton throne. Apparently, you know, Chelsea's pregnant and going to have a child, which is great. But Crowley thinks this is fantastic news. She tweeted recently in all caps about that, along with the Obamacare numbers, as if this were some sort of divine sign that Obama and Clinton were sort of on top of the world. Definitely, she's going to carry that with her for the rest of her career.
Well, she is the American royal baby on the way. All right. Well,